Hello, everyone out there. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Welcome, and this is an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be alive, folks, because right now Biden has stepped down, so now we can nominate a real progressive. This is our chance, a real fighter for the workers, a real anti-war candidate. Let's fight like hell. Let's never back down. Let's show what we're made of. Oh, wait, no, it's over. Oh, okay, it's over. It's over now, apparently. But man, did we fight. That was a hard-fought battle, everybody. Thank you for all we were able to do over the span of that 3 days. Really, I enjoyed fighting alongside you for a real progressive. The Guardian is announcing that Kamala Harris has enough delegate support to become the Democratic nominee. They're saying Kamala Harris already has the number of delegates needed to be the nominee. And let's play a real quick clip, like 10-second clip of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They just gave a press conference. This is the Democratic head of the Senate and the Democratic head of the House, and standing together. And here is what Chuck Schumer said about this epic fight over who is going to be the Democratic nominee for the presidency. Here is Chuck Schumer.
So now that the process is played out from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have
to. Not only does no one clap, but did he just say the process has played out? That was it? That was the grassroots bottom-up fight over who's going to be the Democratic nominee for president was what, 3 days? 4, if you want to be generous. And now they're telling us this is just a crazy level of gaslighting that the process has played out. It was one hell of a process to decide Kamala Harris is now the Democratic nominee. But let me tell you this. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. Think about what this will mean for America if Kamala Harris wins the presidency. I'm excited to finally have a woman as the face of this genocide going on in Gaza. Finally, a female will be the one deciding to drop bombs on children on a daily basis. Think of how far this country has come. We used to be a country where we wouldn't even let women vote, nor people of color. And we have advanced, we have grown, we have evolved to a wonderful time when there's now a chance that a woman of color will be the one deciding to kill millions around the world. Hundreds of thousands in a proxy war with Russia alone. If she wins, a woman will be the face of an economic system that enriches the billionaires off the backs of the poorest Americans. A woman will be the front of a surveillance system that can track anyone at any time. A female will finally be the head of a system that forces hundreds of millions into wage slavery, barely getting by, devoting the prime of their lives to jobs they hate in order to enrich the capitalist titans. How fucking exciting is this? A woman of color will be at the top of the system that exploits women of color more than just about anyone else. And she will support that system. I'm sure it feels so much better to be exploited by your own kind. Kamala will be the first woman to lead one of the largest and most deadly policing systems in the known world. Each year, when we find out American cops have killed more innocent people than ever before, we'll get to take comfort in the fact that a black woman said will oversee the largest prison state around the globe, and she will be tasked with finding ways to pretend that's somehow moral or ethical or just. And because she's a smart and capable woman, she'll find those ways. I have no doubt in her ability to do that. I couldn't be more thrilled that we could have a woman approving of the CIA's actions that will destroy any democratically elected government around the world that doesn't bend to America's will, possibly driving those countries into destitution and dictatorship, and again, killing millions. No longer will a penis be the one saying, go for it. Finally, a woman will carefully guide this nation on a path to climate destruction, to climate disaster, accelerating towards our own doom rather than trying to avoid it like a rational adult. In this way, a woman will finally be the top of the oil company with an army called the United States of America. As I've watched children starve to death in Gaza, I don't know about you, but I've constantly thought, I wish a woman were behind this. That would just show so much progress. It would show justice. It would show equality. If only these 300 days of U.S.-backed genocide were approved by someone with a vagina, that would just make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I am woman. Hear me roar. Here's the progress. Yes, I'm excited. I'm just saying. I'm excited. Too bad there aren't any women who don't support all of the things that I just said running for president. Oh, wait. Jill Stein and Claudia de la Cruz, just to name a couple. But yes, very exciting times to see that soon we may have someone with a vagina leading our genocides around the world. And let's just play Chuck Schumer telling us that the democratic grassroots process is over. Let's hear that one more time. And then his bombing applause at the end.
Forster. So now that the process is played out from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
You don't have to because no one did. That always helps. If you try and lead an applause break and literally no one in the room joins you, it's important to say you don't have to. Yeah, they already knew they didn't have to, which is why they weren't doing it. So just utter insanity going on right now that we're being told. This is gaslighting on such an incredible level. Joe Biden finally steps aside, can barely put together a sentence, and we're told within 2 to 3 days that, oh, the democratic process is done and Kamala Harris is the nominee. It's just laughable. Laughable. And on top of that, you have Congress bringing the genocider and chief Netanyahu to Congress tomorrow. Actually, before I talk about that for a second, I should mention that coming up in 20 minutes, I've got an interview with Kim Staten, the director, the filmmaker behind a multi-year Julian Assange documentary that he's been putting together for years now, and it is the doc. I've seen it. It's excellent. It's epic. It's so important, and I'll be chatting with him. An interview I taped just a couple hours ago, and that's coming up soon. And I've got more news for you before we get to that. But please click thumbs up, click subscribe, click share, do all of those things. I continue to fight all the suppression and censorship, so you guys make this show possible. Thank you for that. And yeah, throw in a super chat if you feel like it. So Netanyahu's coming to Congress, speak to Congress tomorrow. Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, the Republican House Speaker, has said that he will have anyone arrested who gets in the way or at all interrupts Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is he's just the most important human that the U.S. government has ever spoken to or addressed. So it's really important. Like, you should be arrested for your freedom of speech when Netanyahu's around, because, you know, he is so important to this world. Without him, we wouldn't have a genocide going on of this level. And so you just need to show respect, okay? You need to show respect. Don't interrupt him. Don't protest him. Definitely don't show up and block his motorcade. Definitely don't show him the blood that he's, and I'm talking about the red paint on the hands that Code Pink likes to do. Definitely don't hold that up in front of him to remind him he has blood on his hands. And Mike Johnson is saying he will have anyone arrested if they get in the way of Netanyahu's speech. Speaker Johnson said he will not tolerate protests in the House chamber tomorrow for Netanyahu's speech. He said people will be arrested. Because it's good to see that, you know, many of us have known that we don't have freedom of speech in this country. We haven't had it for a while. And you can be arrested for speech. I mean, going all the way back to Eugene Debs, who ran for president from a prison cell because he was arrested for saying he was opposed to World War I. So maybe not new that we haven't had freedom of speech, but it's good to see that we also don't have it within the halls of Congress. Like, you also don't have freedom, because that really wouldn't be fair. If we didn't have freedom of speech outside of Congress, but they got to have it inside of Congress, that would be pretty frustrating. And so I think this is a great thing Mike Johnson is doing. Just arrest anyone who interrupts somebody committing a genocide. Good for him. Good for Mikey boy. It all really just shows how beholden these Congress people are to Netanyahu and Israel. Just to remind everybody, thousands, if not over 100,000, it's tough to know the numbers before it happens, are going to D.C. tomorrow to protest. That's July 24th. Arrest Netanyahu. This is, you can find out about it and find about bus rides as well at various places, but this is at answercoalition.org, ANSWER, Answer. That's how you spell answer. So go to Answer, coalition.org, and you can get more info on arresting Netanyahu for war crimes against humanity. They're saying to wear red because it's the people's red line that they are trying to encircle the Capitol and form a red line against Netanyahu. So check that out if you're anywhere near D.C. or if you're in one of the cities where they will be busing people in from. Okay, I want to, before we get to the interview in about 15 minutes, I want to get to the fact that we have just seen the world's hottest day ever. This has repeatedly been, many have said this is the world's hottest summer in recorded history. But recorded history, keep in mind, includes ice cores that go back 100,000 years or more. So this is the hottest day in recorded history ever recorded, according to preliminary data. So this recorded history goes back to 1940 when they started recording tracked global weather patterns. Before that, they might have tracked some weather patterns, but not globally. So that goes back to 1940. But as I've covered before, we know that the Earth is now hotter than it's been for 100,000 or more years, and they know that based on ice cores. Anyway, hottest day ever recorded. And then the following day, after the hottest day ever recorded, here's what our amazing New York Times, our so-called liberal New York Times, the right wing loves to make fun of the New York Times for believing climate change is a thing. And yet, here's New York Times, the day after, hottest day ever. They did a big thing on it's hot out, but people still look good. Don't they look beautiful? New Yorkers have found plenty of ways to navigate the heat waves in style. It's literally a fashion piece on how to look good while the world burns. It is just unbelievable, the state of the world we're in, the state of the presidential election, the state of the media. It's just so fucking ridiculous and catastrophic. It's disgusting. These people are fucking disgusting. And yet here they are. It's hot out, but people still look good. Yeah. No true flags here, commenter points out that New York City will be underwater soon. I used to live in New York City for 12 years, and while I was there, we had Superstorm Sandy that flooded large swaths of New York City. And it's not just that the harm of the actual disaster. So a flood obviously can kill people, et cetera, but it's the after effects that can kill people. I went and volunteered in Coney Island, which was completely flooded. But one of the things that happens after the floodwaters recede is if you have not just skyscrapers, but if you have a 7-story building, a 10 or 20-story building, which there were plenty of in Coney Island and other areas that were terribly flooded, the power's out, and the power can be out for days, weeks, and people who are disabled, they're often in elevator buildings, and they're actually not capable of getting down all those stairs on their own. These are often very elderly people. And so literally they were trapped in these buildings. And even if you could get them out, even if, okay, you send 5 people up to literally carry this person out. Okay, well, now they're on a sidewalk. Now they're homeless. So they'd prefer to stay in their apartment and not be able to get out rather than be carried down. But then they only have food for a few days or something. So we were delivering, what part of the volunteer work I was doing with Occupy Sandy and others was just delivering food to people that are trapped in 20-story buildings. Like, that's the type of situation we're talking about right now. But don't worry, New Yorkers look good doing it. Oh, they have such great dresses and things for how awesome they're going to look while it's 9 billion degrees outside. I don't know when they took this photo, but for some odd reason, the people behind this woman, all wearing long sleeves and long pants. So I don't know if they took this in February, and but anyway, it's just they're repulsive. The New York Times is repulsive, and we're also, the other thing we're doing, other than New York Times, obviously ignoring the cataclysmic times in which we live, is we're arresting and putting in jail anybody who dares protest against this future that we're making for ourselves, this cataclysmic future. This is from the BBC. Just Stop Oil protesters have been jailed after blocking the M25 highway. There's a photo of the highway being blocked. And this includes Roger Hallam, who is the creator of Extinction Rebellion. And I believe he's been sentenced to, isn't it several years? Yeah. Hallam was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, while the other defendants each received 4-year jail terms. Years. This is in Britain. Years in prison for blocking a highway to try and raise attention to the fact that we are all killing ourselves, and that's where our future's going. And because this show is based on getting down to the core reality, the deeper levels, the deeper than the surface levels, I will also mention here, and I think I'm the only one talking about this, that we will never get off of fossil fuels as long as the petrodollar is the source of America's power. As long as America believes that all, or as much as possible, fossil fuels need to be pumped in dollars, and that is where the strength of the U.S. dollar comes from, as long as that is the system, then the U.S., which is still one of the most powerful countries in the world, most powerful empires in the world, the U.S. will do everything they can to make sure that we continue towards an end times, towards this climate crisis end times, because they will do everything they can to push fossil fuels. And this right now, the United States is trying to stop China from switching to green energy, solar panels, batteries, and electric vehicles, which the U.S. is doing everything it can to stop China from getting other countries to make that switch. And if you look at the world, which is switching slowly but steadily to green energy, if you look at those numbers, like the vast majority of them, almost all of them come from China switching. China is switching, which is one of the largest economies in the world. And if you subtract China from those numbers, almost none of the world is switching away from fossil fuels in a large way. You may have some smaller countries, I mean, in terms of population, that may be doing something. You know, I know Sweden is doing some, and Finland's doing some, and Iceland's doing some, but they're such a small, they're a drop in the bucket for the global population. Anyway, I don't think, very few other human beings seem to be connecting this to the petrodollar and why the U.S. needs to crush green energy. But now we have the founder of Extinction Rebellion, Roger Hallam, in prison for 5 years unless he wins on appeal because they blocked some traffic and tried to call attention to climate crisis. Okay. Let's talk for a moment about, well, I did talk about Netanyahu a minute ago, but let's talk about Israel for a second and their ongoing genocide. We are coming up on 300 days of straight genocide. We are already past 9 months of genocide. And I just thought I'd bring you, this is actually a win, and actually a good news, that so basically the headline is, here's how a collective of tech professionals shut down the Israeli army's extortion website. And it sounds a little confusing. What the hell is an extortion website? Well, the IDF has been dropping leaflets over the Palestinian people that basically say, turn in all these criminals. Basically, they're dozens of people that Israel feels are Hamas militants, and it says, turn in these people or else we're going to keep bombing you, or we're going to bomb this neighborhood, etc. That kind of thing. It's trying to extort them into doing what the IDF wants, and this article calls it psychological torture, trying to get the Gazan people to turn on each other rather than turning on the actual perpetrators of the genocide. And they keep dropping these leaflets, but the site, which it tells people to go to in order to reveal their friends and family, where is that site? I can't. Companies like Webflow. Webflow is one of them, but they successfully got the site shut down because they went to the website's registrar, Namecheap, and the hosting service to Webflow. And they basically went to these organizations and said, are you aware you're being used for military purposes? And they were able to get the websites shut down in like 24 hours. So the website the IDF had put up in order to try and get Gazans to turn against each other via extortion. So this is a pretty interesting win for people that are up against so much. Okay, thanks everybody. Please click thumbs up, click share, click all those good things. Make sure you subscribe to both my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel, because my YouTube channel could get shut down at any time. I'm going to keep trying to build it up, but who knows? They banned the last one. They could ban this one too. So in order to be ready for that, please make sure you also subscribe at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Do both. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to have my interview with the director, the filmmaker behind perhaps the best Julian Assange documentary, which has just come out, called Julian Assange, The Trust Fall. And I will have all that coming up for you very shortly, in just a few minutes. But I want to cover this story, which has been covered in the mainstream media. It's very rare, as you guys know, it's very rare that a murder by U.S. police is covered in the mainstream media. Now, there are glaring exceptions, big exceptions, which are important, like George Floyd and like Eric Garner and some others. But those are a tiny, tiny percentage of the amount of people the police across the United States kill. The police across the United States kill average 1,200 a year, but as I've mentioned, the Lancet Medical Journal proved that number every year, that number is roughly half of the reality, because most murders by police are not written down or not recorded as murders by police. They are recorded as cardiac arrest or something like that. So 2,400 roughly people murdered by U.S. police every year. In Denmark, it's one. Sometimes it's one. A lot of years it's zero. But, let's not give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, Denmark, why are your police murder rates so high with your occasional one? Huh? How about Iceland with your one police murder since your founding? Murder by police since your founding. What happened there, Iceland? Why'd you let that murder happen? Okay, you had a murder by police one since your founding, and what are you doing? What are you doing? Get your shit together, okay? Okay, Iceland. Anyway, there is a new murder by U.S. police that is actually getting mainstream coverage, and this has to do with the fatal shooting of Sonya Massey in her home. This happened in Illinois by Illinois State Police Monday afternoon. And I'm not going to play the video because I'm not into to terror porn or trauma porn or whatever it is. I'm not saying it's not an important video, and I know that some people are you're welcome to go watch it if it helps you understand the incident. But it is a video of police. They were called by her. They weren't there to investigate her. They were called by her because she said a prowler was outside. This also goes to show never call the police unless it's your last option. But they were called by her. They show up. They see either a broken or somehow, I think a broken or a cracked window of her car. And so they decide that gives them enough reason to investigate her. This also gets to the racist underpinning of all of these interactions. If this were a white person who called the police and had a cracked window of their car, something tells me the police would go, "Yeah, we didn't see a prowler. Good night." End of story. But instead, these police want to investigate her. They come into her apartment. They're talking to her. She goes to take the boiling, actually, at the recommendation of the cop says, "Why don't you take the boiling water off because we don't want to cause a fire." So she goes to take the boiling water off. He then says, he then backs up and she says, "Where are you going?" He says, "Away from your hot steaming water," which I think she might have misunderstood and maybe thought he was saying something crude at her or something. But she then says, "Away from my hot steaming water, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." And he says, "What?" She says, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." And then he shoots her and murders her. She says, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." He says, "You better fucking not." Really? Why don't I go, "Okay, you rebuked me in the name of Jesus." And then he then says, "I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you right in the face." And then he shoots her and kills her. This is all because she said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," which last I heard, you actually have a right to say you rebuke people in the name of Jesus. You can just do that to anybody. They don't have a right to then shoot and murder you. It's totally horrific, but again, I like to get to the core reality, the core understanding that we need to garner from something like this. When police murder someone, yes, there's outrage at those police officers. There should be. These police officers should be locked up for murdering this woman. There is understandable outrage often at the chief of police for, often we find out these officers had former complaints against them, like the ones who killed George Floyd and Eric Garner. They both had histories of strangling or kneeling on the throat of people and had just been kept out on the streets. These are criminals who are just kept on the streets as police officers. So yes, that type of discussion should be had, and perhaps it should be the first and foremost. But we also can get down to the deeper levels of reality, that our policing system is outrageous. It is brutal. It is disgusting writ large. You are inviting people with guns, usually jacked up, roided up. The estimates are 25% of all police officers in urban areas are abusing steroids, which cause roid rage, can cause poor decision making, etc. On top of that, who is it that decides to join police, to become a police officer in this country? It's usually men, and it's usually men who are obsessed with authority, want authority, desperately want to make others bend to their will, which is dangerous. To have people who, before they got into police, desperately wanted the ability to, bend down and crush others, and then they're given that ability with a badge and a gun. Very dangerous. Who else is selected for policing across America? Usually not very bright people, because most police stations, it was found that it's actually legal to give possible cops a IQ test, and if they're too smart, not hire them. So some police departments literally will not hire smarter people as police officers. There's also the fact that, according to Captain Ray Lewis and others, some police departments give you empathy tests. And if you have too much empathy, they won't hire you. So they want dumb, low empathy, usually abusing steroids, quick to anger, crazy motherfuckers. That's who ends up in our police systems. And you get to the heart of what policing is in this country. It started as slave patrols. All right. That's and as far as I know, in the Western world, that was the first time that police were kind of on most street corners. Like you'd see them regularly just walking around. Before that time, yes, there was a sheriff or something, but you basically had to call the sheriff. And before telephones, that was no easy thing to do. You had to wrap a note around a pigeon's leg, and it's not easy. Thank you, Blue Jet, for the donation. Appreciate it. Keep fighting. So it's very tough to wrap the note around the pigeon's leg when you're being chased by an axe murderer. You're trying to write on the little, because those pieces of paper on the pigeon, carrier pigeon's legs are very tiny. So you got to write, you're running and you're trying to write and then wrap it around the leg and then go, little guy, off to the sheriff's office. Very tough, very tough. Despite that part being a joke, it is true that, like, slave patrols, literally just giving white guys guns, or actually most of them, they'd say you have to bring your own gun. Basically, if you're a white guy, white man, and you have your own gun, then we will let you walk around the city and pester, arrest, harm, brutalize, what have you, any black people you see. That was kind of the beginning of the policing system that we now have. And you see that police in other nations, not all, but many other nations, they don't have guns on their hips unless they are like the SWAT team, unless they are this special group of people to deal with, who their main focus is dealing with other armed people. The average cop you see, they may have something. They may have a baton. They may have some mace. I mean, until a few years ago, even the cops in, I don't know whether it was 20 or 30 years ago, but even the cops in Britain didn't have guns on their hip, except for very few of them. And that's part of the reason they were not running around murdering people, because they didn't use the gun as the only tool. Even if they made poor decisions and attacked someone they shouldn't, and used every ability they had to harm someone they shouldn't be harming, they didn't have the ability to kill them very easily, unless they sat there whacking them with their little baton for a half an hour. You really gotta invest some time to kill someone with one of those batons. So there's just so many levels of the policing system in the United States that is disgusting and wrong, and it's wrong at its core. And of course, if I need to mention this, neither Donald Trump or Kamala Harris will do anything about this. Trump loves every police officer he's ever met. When he was president, he did nothing but fund the police more. Kamala Harris called herself the top cop of California because she was the attorney general. She loves policing. She loves police. She will fund them as much as Trump. There is no difference between the two on our outrageous police system. And Kamala Harris worked to actually cover up police crimes when she was attorney general in California. So, now we have, to bring it back to the surface level, now we have yet another horrific murder. The only thing that makes this perhaps a little unique is that we actually got the video quickly, which I did a large segment the other day about how rare it is to get the body camera video that actually shows what happened quickly after a murder. Generally, the police departments do everything they can to cover it up. Eventually, maybe you'll get the body cam footage, but that's really what makes a difference in this one, is that it makes it different than most, is that we're seeing the person these cops killed. They killed, U.S. cops killed 1,200 a year, if you believe their numbers, 2,400 if you believe the Lancet Medical Journal. And how many of those do we get body camera footage of? Well, here's one. So, one. I mean, without it being 5 years later when no one's paying attention. So, one, maybe. Two? Maybe we get two of the body cam footage. Anyway, very sad murder by these insane, unhinged police. Okay, let's get to the interview with Kim Staten. He is actually, before I do the intro, I should tell you, at the end of the interview, I will come back on for a few minutes, but I will be doing a special segment for those of you on Locals, an exclusive segment for those of you on Locals after the interview. So anybody at Locals, if you want to see the exclusive comedy segment I'll be doing for you, then definitely hang around at the end of the interview. Do not hang up your laptop. Clink, clink. By the way, it was a big news story. I'm sure he's not the first to do this. But Blake Shelton, during the U.S. Open, everyone got very upset because he beat an opponent and then did the hanging up the phone thing. Like, he answered the call to beat the guy and then hung up a phone. And Blake Shelton's like 19 or something years old, maybe 21. I don't know. How does he even know that a phone gets hung up? How does he even know that? He has never seen one of those phones in his life. I don't know where he got that, but anyway. All right, here's the interview. I'll be back to say goodbye afterwards, but I'll also be back to do a special segment for those of you at Locals. If you want to join up at Locals and get all of the exclusive segments, then please go to leecamp.net and support this show for 38 cents an episode. 38 cents. You can do it. I have faith in you to support this show. All right, Kim Staten is a filmmaker out of Australia. He's the writer and director of The Trust Fall with Julian Assange, and he also won an award for Best Emerging Director in Australia, and this movie is excellent. It's in theaters around the world, although he'll say, you'll notice, I filmed this interview a couple hours ago, he'll say that the U.S. is one of the places where they thought they'd get a lot of coverage in theaters, and guess what? The U.S. is not allowing this film in most theaters. So there you go. All right, and I will see you after this interview, which I just taped a few hours ago.
Very good, Lee. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for doing this interview, despite being the entirely around the world from where I am. I watched the film. I think it's excellent. I think, honestly, there's been other films made about Assange, other documentaries, but I feel like this is the one to see. If you can only watch one, this is the one to see. Really excellently done. And, I guess I'll start with, when do you recall that you first started following what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks were doing and realizing it was important? Was it immediately, or did it grow with the persecution against him?
For me, it starts in 2010. I'm sitting on the couch in my living room, and this shocking footage comes up on the news. 12 people on a street corner in New Baghdad during the Iraq War. It's black and white footage. There's an American Apache helicopter shooting down 12 people, including two Reuters journalists. And then a van pulls up, a father and two children. They're on the way back from school, and then the Apache American helicopter shoots up the van, civilians trying to help. And that image just stuck in my mind, really tattooed on my brain for years. shocking as it was. And it was a few years later I made the connection that was actually a WikiLeaks release, and Julian Assange, this person I'd heard the name, was the founder and editor of WikiLeaks. And so I just became more and more interested, and it was I guess another 4 or 5 years later that I started watching different documentaries, and then 3.5 years from today, I was really wanting to get involved and make a difference, and that was where the genesis of the film began.
So, yeah, that was about 2010. I guess that's when I first started following him as well. And of course, initially he was beloved by I don't know about beloved, but at least the mainstream media worked with him. They would cover the stories coming out from WikiLeaks, and then once they got the cue from the U.S. empire that it was time to turn against him, they all did, and immediately stopped supporting him. Immediately, basically supported his persecution, which was horrific and cowardly of them. You have it. The film has impressive access and impressive amount of people involved in it. Susan Sarandon, Roger Waters, Tariq Ali, great academics and speakers. Do you feel like this film kind of serves as an effort to fight against the rewriting of history that our corporate media and our government, the U.S. government, the Australian government, maybe to some degree, but I guess a lesser degree, it feels like they're already involved in the rewriting of history, and I feel like this film can help stand against that.
Yeah, I think now that Julian Assange is free, we're still seeing, even within even the same day that he was freed, you still had these smears being recycled. That he put lives at risk, and that he's a traitor and a hacker and so on, and an agent of Russia. And you'd be very familiar with all of these smears, and they just seem to go on and on. And even though, like, literally the Judge Magnola in Saipan confirmed for the second or third time that it's happened, that no lives were put at risk by WikiLeaks releases under the releases that were implicated in the 18-count indictment. But you still had even Australian media, Sky News, Murdoch-owned news, were still some of them even starting off their little spiel, their reporting with these smears. And I think that unfortunately will continue to go on until people get fully informed on it, and certainly the film debunks those popular smears, and now we're looking back at Assange's story is part of history. I think it's a incredibly significant occurrence in history, the first journalist being indicted under the antiquated 1917 Espionage Act. This is a shocking precedent, and so I think the US, even though they could see that they were losing this extradition case, that they were quite happy to take at least that one count of the indictment, and as you say, this is going to be now a battle of information, an information war as to what story goes down in history. We know that in state-run schools, the history that we learn in history books is often incorrect, and I think it's really important that future generations understand the story of Assange and what really happened, why they went after him, and what sort of person Julian is, what his missions and visions are, and that he's remembered. This whole saga has been about exposing the crimes of the powerful, and not that Julian committed any crime. So he certainly needs to be pardoned, completely vindicated from any crime. And I understand that his defense team will be at some point, on an effort to clear his name, to have him vindicated of that one count of the indictment under the plea deal.
Yeah, can you talk just a couple more minutes about what the plea deal that they forced him into means for press freedom means for the ability to commit acts of journalism. And I've said clearly, as I think many have, that I absolutely think he should have taken the plea deal, because just watching this man tortured for the rest of his life is not worth it. But yeah, just talk about the plea deal a little more. Did I lose you? Kim? Can you hear me at all?
Just broke up.
Yeah.
You just broke up for about 60 seconds there. I hope you've got editing ability. I got the first part of the question. About what the precedent set by the plea deal. If you could just repeat the second part of that question, please.
It was basically, if you could just talk more about what the plea deal means for journalism and freedom of press.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, look, it's not the perfect outcome. Like, as a full-blown supporter of Assange, I really feel that he should have been completely absolved of any crime at all. He didn't commit any crime. His work that he did was typical journalistic work, to receive classified information, any kind of information, and study it and redact names and then publish it. That's what a journalist is supposed to do. But to save his life, he had to agree to this plea deal because he's going up against the most brutal empire on the planet, that are baying for his blood, that have plotted to assassinate him in the embassy, and that have been trying to slowly execute him behind a prison wall for 5 years. So I do totally understand that this plea deal was a way to save his life by the defense team. And under that deal, he had to agree not to basically to return or to destroy any classified information that WikiLeaks is currently holding, not yet made public. It doesn't stop them from doing disclosures in the future and publishing future leaks. And then also, he's not allowed to submit FOI requests for US documents himself. Other people can, of course, do it. And to his favor, the US agreed to not bring any additional charges based on his conduct before the agreement, and there's no gag order, so he can still have free speech and continue to criticize governments. I look forward to seeing him do that when he's ready. And but as far as the precedent that's set, this is the first time that a journalist has been convicted under the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act has been used against many people, including the Pentagon Papers, Vietnam War whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg in the early 70s, and many other US whistleblowers. It's been used many, many times, but never before on a journalist. So it is a shocking precedent, and this is what I mean. There was already a terrible precedent set by the persecution of Assange for all those years. And many people said, many journalists, many free speech rights groups, human rights groups said that it was going to cause a chilling effect on journalism. But I think that had already set in, and you'd probably be aware of that the last decade or so, we're just seeing more and more deplatforming, and there's self-censorship. Citizens feel like they can't even share their own views on things, and so there's a decline in press freedom. It's something else that we reveal in the film, is that over the last decade, we've seen more and more journalists in prison around the world, over 500 journalists currently in prison. And Assange is just one of them. And so, it's unfortunately setting a bad precedent. And, it looks to be part of this sort of march of totalitarianism that is that is underway, where we have less freedom of speech, less ability to know what governments are doing in our name.
Yeah, it is pretty horrifying. I think you're absolutely right that the chilling effect has already gone into effect. It's already been happening over the past decade. We've seen far fewer leaks and disclosures, and it seems like returning to a world where the U.S. government and many other governments can continue to operate in the shadows, in darkness, without people knowing what's being done in our names. Returning to that time has really been one of the top priorities of at least the U.S. government, if not many others. Um, you were obviously following this ridiculous Kafkaesque legal proceedings over the past several years in Britain. Uh, just talk a little about what the hell was going on there, because I think for your average viewer, even people that follow Julian Assange, they were people were like, "Is this how it always works? Is it just extradition hearing, appeal, extradition hearing, appeal for 7 straight years?" Like, I think it was baffling to people, but I assume that was partially by design.
Yeah, before I answer that, and I just remembered a point, connected to your previous question about the state of press freedom, and there hasn't been much whistleblower material, and it was under Trump that the indictment, the grand jury indictment on Assange occurred. It was under Trump that he was carried out of the embassy like a piece of timber and thrown into the timber lorry off to Belmarsh prison. But it was under Obama that something else that was shocking happened, where Obama actually persecuted more whistleblowers than all other previous US presidents combined. So this was a huge clampdown on journalism, that on whistleblowers, sorry, that occurred in the Obama's time, and then you had Trump going after Assange, Biden carrying that on up until 3-4 weeks ago. As far as the extradition trial, this was one of about 24 court cases that Assange has had to battle. It's part of this plot to, it's called lawfare, to use the law against somebody to try to bankrupt them, create all these bogus charges, drag them through the courts for years and years. It was part of the Stratfor advice, that was given to the US government, this firm called Stratfor in 2008, where they said, what you should do to destroy Assange and WikiLeaks is drag him from country to country, keep him embroiled in legal cases, bankrupt him. That was one of the points of advice that was given. So we had this extradition trial go on for years. There was, the point where Judge Vanessa Baraitser decided that, in that initial stage of his extradition case, that he basically won that first stage because of his risk of suicide. The conditions he was in were so torturous that he wanted to take his own life. He had a razor blade hidden in his cell. He was going to take his own life if they were going to put him on a plane to the US. So that was one of the points where it looked hopeful for Assange, but then continually what we saw was that the US had complete control of that court hearing, apparently control of the UK judges. All of these shocking developments that happened in the Assange case were ignored by the UK judges for those years, most notably including that it came out that UC Global was spying on Assange and his lawyers and visitors in the embassy. Then we had the star witness for the US, Sigurdur Thordarson, who lied in his testimony. He admitted in a radio interview to Icelandic newspaper Stundin that he lied. They ignored that. they ignored the fact that he has been found to have Asperger's syndrome, and somebody that has a disability shouldn't be in solitary. They ignored the advice of Niels Melzer and the 3 doctors that surveyed Julian in the Belmarsh prison under the Istanbul Protocol to discover that he was to determine that he was a victim of psychological torture. So, you had issue after issue presented by the defense, and it was all ignored. So it became very apparent that the UK judges were incredibly corrupt. And I do feel that it's that mounting public pressure that was growing day by day, especially over the last couple of years, that caused the UK judges to decide, well, we can't continue this charade, this show trial, because we're meant to be judges. We're meant to have ethics and morals and judgment. That's why they call us judges. And, that the public pressure caused those judges to, the new judges that came in on the extradition trial to allow the appeal on those grounds of free speech, and would he be prejudiced against as an Australian citizen being tried if he was tried in the US. So I think it was public pressure caused the UK judges to kind of cave in, and then the US was basically forced to resume that discussion on the plea deal. The other side of it is there's an extradition treaty between the US and the UK, and it doesn't allow political prisoners to be extradited, and they were in flagrant disregard of that as well. So there was just numerous examples of just shocking injustice in this whole show trial of his extradition trial.
Well, well put. And you mentioned the community pressure, the world pressure. I guess we can make this the last question, along with telling everybody how they can see the film. But talk about that, the surge of support for Assange, the impact it had, the millions around the world. I mean, I was a part of God knows how many protests here in the United States, many of them very small, but it really was, it's tough to keep the energy behind a story like this over years and years and years. And, it's testament to what Assange achieved that people kept coming out and kept supporting him. But it's also testament to a small group who was, leading this charge, his family, and, a few other activists who were just spending night and day for 12 years on this.
Yeah, well, on one hand, we had this unprecedented extraterritorial overreach of this brutal empire taking on an Australian journalist, trying to set a precedent, trying to scapegoat him and scare off other future would-be whistleblowers and their publishers. But on the other hand, you had this unprecedented, worldwide, incredible campaign, which we may never see again, in support of a single person all around the world, small groups, organizing, vigils. Like for example, in Australia, you got Sydney and Melbourne. For years now, there's been these vigils. For example, like every Friday night at Flinders Street Station in Melbourne, in the middle of winter, there's a group there handing out flyers, giving speeches, talking to people. And this is replicated all over the world in many capital cities. And then his family members, Stella, Assange's wife, his father, John Shipton, his brother, Gabriel Shipton, leading these massive organizations and groups, and the Assange campaign in the US, in Washington. And that's echoed through other countries as well. And then on top of that, you had, world leaders of Mexico and other countries speaking out. All the human rights groups that wrote joint letters, like in 2021, we had 21 human rights and free speech groups writing a joint letter. Basically, every free speech group was unanimous on it, from Amnesty International to Reporters Without Borders and so on. And then you have all the art, all the films and the books, and Niels Melzer's Trial of Julian Assange book, and Stefano Marizzi's excellent book, and all the documentaries. It was just like an incredible campaign where I think anytime that people were getting discouraged, someone else would come up and do something. I think to a degree with the Trust Fall, we were able to reignite passions, especially in Australia, New Zealand, UK. We had activists come in and watch that film, and they just got so fired up. Like when we showed the first London screening, 400 people, there was about 25 or 30 applauses during the film. Everyone was so pumped. It was, like a week before Day X, these massive protests. There was the human chain protests about a year ago in London, where 7,000 people joined hands and circled Parliament. It was just such a huge, inspiring campaign, and I think accompanied by the social media coverage and connections as well, and just that cooperation enabled the growth of that campaign. Just that continual growth. Julian has this terrific quote, which is, "There is unity in the oppression, and there must be absolute unity and determination in the response." I think through his work, he's been able to inspire people all around the world from basically every country on the planet to want to do something. And it's all testament to his courage and his genius in the work that he did with what they disclosed.
Thanks. Well said again, and thank you so much, Kim, for your time. Remind people how they can best watch and support the film.
Yeah, well, it's been in cinemas in Australia, New Zealand, UK for over 6 months now, and starting to wind down. There's still a few cinemas in these regions showing the film, so they can go to our website, trustfall.org, to search for your nearest cinema. In the US, we just released the film 5 days ago. It's particularly in Angelica cinema chain, which has about 25 cinemas around. So, I'm not sure if they're showing it again, but there should be other US cinemas coming on board. Look, out of all the regions we've released it so far in cinemas, we've seen a huge reluctance from US cinema programmers to show this film. I think they're either scared of their own government, or they're misguided and think that Assange is this or that, and somehow testing the First Amendment and revealing the crimes of their own government is somehow wrong. So I really encourage cinema programmers to show the film. It's really important. We've reached out to all the cinemas. The uptake has been pathetic. So I would like to see it expand in the US. If you're a US citizen, request it to your local cinema. We're going to keep hoeing away and trying to get it into US cinemas over the coming weeks, and try to get it to take off. It did take off. It slowly built in Australia, UK, New Zealand. We didn't have the budget to put it out like the latest Ghostbusters reincarnation. We don't have the budget of Ghostbusters: The Frozen Empire or Godzilla: The New Empire. But what's more scary, the US government or Ghostbusters or Godzilla? What's more scary?
Yeah, the US Empire is Godzilla. Yeah.
So, but the digital release will be coming up soon. So we'll be announcing a date pretty soon, actually, for the film to come out on places like beautiful democratic places like Amazon Prime and Apple TV, a few other platforms. Our platform, Films for Change. So we will be getting it out to the entire world through digital means very soon as well. And I really encourage people to take a fresh look at this issue, especially if you think you know what it's about.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Kim, and congrats on a really excellent film. There it is. My interview with Kim Staten, the director, filmmaker behind Julian Assange, The Trust Fall. And You can check it out. Go to Trustfall or thetrustfall.org to find out if there's theater in your area. You can, but also it should be available online in not too long, so you can get it there. I'll throw you one more story here before I bring the exclusive comedy segment to leecamp.net with everybody over at Locals. I'll be bringing you a comedy segment in just a second. But let me just give you one more thing here. Very important story. Very important. Breaking news. I'll call this breaking news. I did a poll on my tweeters here. Elon Musk loves when you call them the tweeters. And it is, if the election were today and these were the choices, who would you vote for? Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, or a rock I found in my yard? The rock I found in my yard is killing it, destroying the opposition. Okay? Okay, everyone? Destroying the opposition. Donald Trump, 13.5%. Kamala Harris, 18.3%. Rock I found in my yard, 68.2%. Killing it. Killing it. So I think that, shows where America's at right now. If you want to learn more about the platform of the rock I found in my yard, you can go to yardrock2024.com. Eric the Red nails it. Eric, thank you. He says Yard Rock has a great platform. Check out Yard Rock's platform. Yes, Matthew wants me to put RFK on there. Maybe I'll do that in the future. I can't. I think there's a lot of positives about RFK on every once in a while, but I also can't get behind a genocide lover. So, he supports the genocide, and he seems to think that climate crisis can be solved by capitalism. So, those are kind of two red lines for me. But check out that poll. You can. By the way, that poll is still running. You can go over, throw your vote in there. Thank you. Matthew says he still loves me despite my being a bit of an asshole. Thank you, Matthew. So, all right, I'm headed over to leecamp.net, my Locals page. If you want to see the exclusive segment and all the exclusive segments I do over there, just go to leecamp.net, scroll down to become a subscriber. You can also join up for free. You won't get the exclusive segments, but you can join for free by going to leecamp.net and clicking become a member. But scroll down and become a subscriber if you want to get everything, all the perks. You'll get my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You'll get my comedy special, Laughing All the Way to the Shitstorm. You'll get all of that and much more if you join up as become a subscriber when you get to leecamp.net. Okay, I'm going to see you guys. Let's see. I think we're doing Government Secrets tomorrow. So if you want to join me for that, that's at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. But otherwise, I will see you Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I'm always putting extra clips up, so keep checking at youtube.com/moment of clarity or rumble.com/leecamp. And I will bid everyone farewell, except for those of you on Locals. Hang around, everybody on Locals, and I'll be with you in 1 second. I just have to fix the streams. And then we'll do a comedy segment. I hope you've been enjoying the comedy segments.